challenges to reducing winter salt use, addressing limited liability in Ontario. On behalf of Partners in Project Green, I would like to thank you all for joining us. My name is Chaya Chengappa, and I am a program manager with Partners in Project Green. We have an interesting topic for today's webinar and are joined by three accomplished presenters. The webinar will focus on the role of government in regulating winter salt use for the safety of humans and the natural environment, the issue of limited liability influencing excess salt use, what winter maintenance salt contractors are doing to reduce their application rates, and what actions individuals and businesses can take. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so please use the Q&A feature to submit questions. And we also encourage you to chat with fellow attendees using the chat feature and to reach out to us for any tech questions through the chat feature as well. A recording of this webinar will be available. I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. So while we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We respectfully acknowledge that we are situated on the traditional territories and treaty lands, in particular those of the Mississauga Nation, as well as the Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto and Region Conservation Authority appreciates and respects the history and diversity of the land and is grateful to have the opportunity to work and meet in this territory. At Partners in Project Green and the TRCA, we recognize the role that all Indigenous people play in passing down the knowledge of their ancestors to protect our land and our waterways, and we welcome all of you to reflect on your own positioning, power, and privilege in relation to the lands that you inhabit. For people who are not familiar with Partners in Project Green, we are a collaboration by the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority and Toronto Pearson, and was launched in 2008. PPG works collaboratively with multi-stakeholders to advance environmental and social sustainability across the GTA through knowledge sharing, technology and infrastructure implementation, and network building. Next slide, please. We're open to any business, municipality, or individual that operates within the Greater Toronto region, in the regions of Peel, York, and Durham, as well as the City of Toronto. So we have a packed agenda for today. We will start with a PPG update and speaker introductions. Our first presentation is on an introduction to the problem by the Ontario Salt Pollution Coalition. This will be followed by a presentation on the legislative reform to address liability concerns by Landscape Ontario. And our final presentation is on technology and best practices to address liability from a contractor. As I mentioned earlier, we will have a Q&A at the end, and you can ask questions. The Partners in Project Green has partnered with TRCA's Sustainable Technologies Evaluation Program and the Ecosystem and Climate Science team to educate and empower the industrial, commercial, and institution and multi-unit residential building sector to take action to build climate resilience. And you can access this free resource hub on our website. There are videos and resources on flood and heat risks, tools, and actions to address them, including utilizing green infrastructure and low-impact development techniques. Eligible businesses can also get a free flood and heat risk site assessment. And for those businesses in the city of Mississauga, we have partnered with the Credit Valley Conservation to deliver the Green Corporate Grounds program to qualifying businesses in the city of Mississauga within TRCA's jurisdiction. We also have some incentives for eligible businesses to support on-ground action after the site assessment is completed. So spots are limited, so please do check the program eligibility and more information on our website. We have QR codes on this slide, and links will be available in the chat for individuals and businesses to take action on winter salt pollution. So the Ontario Salt Pollution Coalition is seeking your support to request the Government of Ontario enact limited liability legislation that includes contractor certification for responsible salt use and provincially endorsed best management practices for winter management. So we request your help in providing this, in signing these letters. Please do use the links or the QR codes provided, and the resources will also be shared after the webinar. I'd now like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Claire McColsman, who's the Executive Director of Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition. Claire has been involved with Lake Simcoe all her life, and her experience of watching the lake change as a cottager led her to create the Paddling Around Lake Simcoe program in 2002, which both spurred citizen engagement in the lake's health and launched her career. She's now the Executive Director of the Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition. Our next speaker is Joe Salemi, who's the Executive Director of Landscape Ontario Horticultural Trades Association. He's a dynamic leader committed to the advancement and prosperity of the landscape horticulture sector in Ontario, and he believes in a people-first leadership philosophy and has a proven track record of scaling businesses through streamlined operations and fiscal management. Our final speaker is John Agg, who's the owner of Pristine Property Maintenance Limited. It's a full-service property maintenance company with headquarters in Ajax, as well as satellite locations in Brighton, Kingston, Ottawa, Lindsay, and Huntsville. He also, Pristine Property Maintenance also subcontracts with over 150 service providers throughout the province. And this gives John a unique insight into challenges facing the snow and ice industry. So welcome to all the presenters, and thank you for making time to be with us today. I would like to invite Claire to present the current efforts of the Ontario Salt Pollution Coalition, including the ecological, health, and infrastructure damage arguments for limiting salt pollution and the solutions the coalition is pursuing.
All right. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be in good company on an issue that we're all concerned about. So I have been introduced. Thank you. So I'm here on behalf of the Ontario Salt Pollution Coalition, which is a collection of groups from Niagara to Sudbury. And we just started meeting in the fall of 2023. So this is a pretty new coalition, but it definitely follows many of our efforts to raise awareness about salt pollution on the water bodies that each of these groups are concerned about. So I'm going to do some high-level overview of some ecological concerns, drinking water, some local and regional impacts, just to give you a snapshot of a few different water bodies in Ontario. And a little bit of what you can do. Next slide. There we go. Our goals. Well, also Chaya has sort of gone through this. So our goals are really what we're talking about today, to ask the province to work with stakeholders to develop limited liability legislation and other parts for the snow and ice management sector. That won't be enough to help our water bodies, however, although it's a really important piece, we totally support. So we're asking the province to also fund and create an expert stakeholder advisory committee to advise how the province and municipalities can best protect our freshwater ecosystems and drinking water from the effects of salt pollution. We're asking municipalities and businesses to commit to the reduction of salt as much as possible while maintaining safety. And as we have municipalities pass municipal resolutions, we're asking that they also send them to AMO, where we have a few municipal leaders this year going to AMO, and they will be raising this issue with their delegates, their provincial delegates in their meetings. So we're really excited and grateful for that. Muskoka, under the leadership of Jeff Lehman, was the first district to pass this resolution. And I just want to express gratitude for that and the incredible citizens and citizen scientists who organize and have also been raising awareness about this issue for a number of years. When I checked my email this morning, I now learned we're up to 13 municipal resolutions, really just since January of this year. They just started in January this year. So this is actually pretty great. And we're really grateful. And we're, of course, inviting any interested municipality to join their ranks. We really try to celebrate online, by the way. So we just a high level snapshot of the issue. So why we're doing this in Ontario. Ontario is responsible for almost half of the 5 million tons of salt applied in Canada every year. And also we have really excellent data. So the Ministry of Environment in Ontario has been monitoring 400 streams and rivers since the 1960s and have found that chloride concentrations have increased twofold in that time. And as Ontario is urbanizing and is spreading out and sprawling, maybe more than we thought it was going to, we really need to be cognizant of the fact that the lakes with the highest levels of chloride concentration are around cities and highways and more dense populated areas. So when we started looking into this issue, we thought, okay, well, Environment Canada has identified salt as toxic, but it's not as toxic as many of the other things on their toxics list. And so they do periodically review toxic substances, but salt, although toxic, has not made it to the priority list for CEPA, for the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. And so the federal government does have guidelines, but those have really not been sufficient to either, to take the change as far as it needs to go. But I just wanted to share this because it is a pretty clear description of the impact on surface water organisms, terrestrial vegetation, and wildlife, and soils and habitats. So here are some of the wildlife. These are probably not creatures you recognize. There are a number of different aquatic organisms, and this is the level, 120 milligrams per liter of chloride is the level at which Environment Canada believes, or their data has demonstrated that these different critters are affected by salt. So it looks like it's not too bad because most of them are beyond the 120 level. But one of the reasons we're asking for a stakeholder advisory committee to dig into this is because in Muskoka, they're finding that some of the planktonic crustaceans are affected at much lower levels of chloride pollution than the slide I just showed you. And so these researchers are looking into the different reactions to chloride in hard water and soft water lakes. And again, we're grateful to the research really being led in Muskoka. The one that is particularly sensitive there in Muskoka is their most common species. So that's quite concerning. And just as a reminder, this is fairly obvious, but the zooplankton do form a really important part of the base of the food chain. So at Lake Simcoe, we've had real problems with our fisheries, and we're not sure what combination of factors are most responsible, but it could be that changes in zooplankton are affecting the fish there. And we all want to continue to fish our lakes, right? So we want to try to protect the food source of the fish. So, but it's not all that fishing and fun. We also drink water, and we'd like that to be healthy too. So that is managed. Our drinking water in municipal wells is managed under the Clean Water Act, and there are policies to make sure that the drinking water we get out of our taps is healthy. But there are some places where still the water contains too much salt. Orangeville and Georgetown have significant threats in their wells over a 50 square kilometer area. Just a brief description there, the policies that municipalities are required to enact have to do with salt storage, risk management plans, and encouraging best management practices, non-mandatory, but these efforts are definitely being made in numbers of municipalities, and we're grateful for that. But the sobering reality is the Credit Valley, the CTC, is a collection of source protection committees throughout the area mapped down in the bottom right of the slide, released a discussion paper just last March, and we pulled out a few quotes. It's not expected that current salting policies will have a significant impact in reducing salt trends. Risk management plans do not appear to be having the desired effect and take a great deal of municipal resources. And finally, that until incentive programs that reduce liability to ensure safety but consider the environment are enacted, no significant change will occur, and sodium and chloride in surface and groundwater will continue to rise. So this is really our call to action, and again, just grateful to the researchers and policy folks that put these papers together. Okay, now on to a few water bodies. So we have Lake Simcoe. So we've got we're on a trajectory to be at the chronic level of salt pollution by 2058. This trend at Lake Simcoe is increasing with urbanization. Again, the hot spots are around highways and urban areas. This is from Sudbury. Ramsey Lake is here and it's at 82. So just as a reminder, 120 milligrams per liter is the chronic or constant exposure guideline level. You should not get there. So 120, they're already at 82. This lake provides 40% of their drinking water. So again, it's even higher than Lake Simcoe's. This is a real problem for them. And then finally, a great report from the TRCA looking at 2018 to 2022, and all of the rivers measured, or almost all of them, are at the chronic guideline. Etobicoke Creek, Mimico Creek, and the Lower Humber watershed had the highest concentrations. 77% of the stations there had average chloride concentrations surpassing the chronic guideline. So that's pretty massive. And then just to sort of summarize again at the end here, we've got public infrastructure that gets damaged by salt. So that's a cost to municipalities as well. The Eco-Fiscal Commission has estimated that economic and environmental damage to salt from salt in Canada is $4.8 billion a year, and then prorated that would be about $2 billion a year for Ontario. That's a big number. We should be working to reduce that. Another way to look at it is that per ton, it's estimated that it costs $496 in damage to the environment. So this is my final slide here, is asking all please to commit to reducing salt as much as possible. Councillors or municipal folks will be happy to help work with you to get another resolution passed, to add to our list, to ask the province of Ontario to act. And then finally, businesses can certainly support our sign-on letter. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire, for providing us with that overview of this very big problem, as well as what individuals and businesses can do. So we really request all of you to take a look at those links and then pass it on to your organizations as well if you are unable to, if you can. If not, you can also take action as an individual. I will now invite Joe to present Landscape Ontario's concerted efforts to tackle the environmental impacts of road salt through the innovative legislative reforms.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Let me just share my screen, share my presentation. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Landscape Ontario has been at the forefront of trying to get regulatory change and reform to balance the liability between private snow and ice contractor and property owner and manager. And I would say that we've been at this for quite a few years and have made a significant amount of progress. Um, and we're doing this all to advance the sustainability and environmental stewardship we have in Ontario. So let me continue. And I think, Claire, you and I are very aligned in how we are thinking about our presentations and talking about the hidden costs of winter safety. And I'll just echo and put a exclamation point. This is something that has significant impact, environmental impact. Um, Road salt washes into our lakes and rivers and groundwater, and it harms aquatic life and plant ecosystems. This is, and it's directly related to an industry that in the warm months, so, here we are in the landscape trades, where we're creating environmentally sustainable green spaces, we're planting trees and shrubs, and we're doing so much good for the environment now. And in the winter, it kind of feels like we undo it by putting down so much salt, and it's really out of fear. The infrastructure damage, like Claire had mentioned as well, soil and plant health. And I'll just reiterate the scale of the problem. In this country, we put down in excess of 5 million tons of road salt each winter. In Ontario, we're responsible for about 3 million. So it's significant. We use a lot of road salt to the point where this past February, with all of the winter snow events, we had a shortage in the province. There was 2 weeks where it was very difficult to get your hands on road salt because of all the different snow events that we were having. So our mission, it's a balanced approach, and we're advocating for practices that ensure public safety while protecting our natural environment. We believe in a shared responsibility model for winter maintenance, where there's an onus on the private contractor to do the work that they say they're going to do, but also on the property owner and manager to make sure that they have a site and a facility that is amenable to be able to maintain the property, and that there's equal liability. So our goal to reduce the overuse of road salt is through legislative reform, through education and training, so promoting best management practice and standards, but also the development of training and accreditation programs. And then lastly, through collaboration. And that's working with both provincial and municipal governments. And Claire mentioned the work that they've been doing through getting municipal buy-in to put pressure on provincial government. And Landscape Ontario has been proud to support those efforts in doing so. In fact, the motions that have been passed by those municipal councils name Landscape Ontario in those motions in our work that we're doing to make legislative reform for the balance of liability. So our goals through legislative reform and standard are to create safe conditions for everyone, for all Ontarians, respecting our natural environment, and this is a top priority for us. We want to reform the liability system by balancing the risk to everyone involved in site and snow management. So really spreading the liability across everyone's shoulders. And then establish a regulatory framework for the procurement of snow and ice management in Ontario. And that's really important as well. So how snow and ice services are procured. So the chilling effect of liability on salt use. The current laws in Ontario often place 100% of the liability for any slip and fall incidents on this private snow and ice contractor. And this results in a pass down of liability from property owners and creates a significant amount of pressure on private contractors, where the result is that there's a fear of loss. The fear of lawsuits leads to preventative over application of salt. Contractors are putting way more salt down than they actually need to, regardless of the weather forecast or actual need. And this is often done to demonstrate, the quote unquote due diligence in court and say, hey, we put down more salt than we needed to, and therefore we should be able to be fine and not liable for slip and falls. In In reality, what happens is more salt is put down, and in some cases, so much salt can be put down that that becomes a slip and fall hazard in and of itself. So these are all things that weigh on the shoulders and the minds of private contractors, and it puts the contractor between a rock and a hard place because remember that I said earlier, in the warm months, these are the same people that are building and maintaining environmentally sustainable green spaces. And in the winter, they're having to put down so much salt that it's causing damage to our environment and infrastructure and soil and plant health. It's two opposing positions that are having to be taken. So we want to build the grassroots support. And this is what Claire was speaking of. It's recognizing that change often starts locally. And we have actively engaged with municipal councils across Ontario. And I've personally attended a few of them to delegate in support of these motions. Our outreach is focused on educating local governments about the environmental and financial costs of excessive salt use. And the key success here in the way that we see is that several municipalities have passed these motions. We saw now 13, Claire's reporting, supporting our call for provincial action on salt pollution liability reform. These motions send a massively powerful and unified message to the provincial government that this is a critical issue for communities across the province. So we want to do this through training and accreditation for a new standard. So Landscape Ontario, through our snow and ice management sector group, has been working to ensure that best practices are understood and implemented. And we've been a strong supporter and promoter of robust training programs, including the Smart About Salt program. We've developed our own training and accreditation to support this balanced liability framework. So in the development of that training and accreditation program, we're looking to train all roles for all staff within a private snow and ice management contractor. Developing a passport system for an employee that stays with that person regardless of where they're employed, and developing a company accreditation for those achieving training thresholds. The idea here is with the liability reform, those contractors that go through this training and accreditation should have limited liability when they do the work that they say they're going to and have delivered on that so that the property owner and manager can also carry some of that liability for what they are responsible for. So let's celebrate a little bit of our progress. And like Claire had mentioned, several municipalities have passed that motion. We have some legislative advancement. We've had some very successful advocacy leading to some serious consideration of liability reform at the provincial level. I think we're in excess of over 50 meetings with the Premier's office and several line ministries that are all supportive of this legislative reform and presently sits with Cabinet. We've had widespread municipal support. We're working through industry education through that development of a training and accreditation program and promotion of other training programs, all raising the bar for the professionalism in the snow and ice management sector. And there's been a significant amount of public awareness with greater media attention and public understanding of the environmental consequences of road salt. And again, empowered contractors, providing those professionals with the knowledge and tools to reduce salt use confidently. Knowing the right amount of salt to use when is really important to all of that. So continuing the momentum, achieving that legislative victory, our primary focus remains on seeing fair liability legislation passed in Ontario. That continues to be a strong focus for the association. Expanding our network, engaging more municipalities and conservation authorities to join this cause. I think there was a QR code to sign a letter or to send a letter. Please do that. Enhancing training and continuously improving and promoting the training programs that we have available to make sustainable practice sustainable practices in the industry norm. And there's a development of an international standard for snow and ice management currently in development. And fostering innovation and encouraging the use of new technologies like liquid brines and advanced weather monitoring systems to help reduce the amount of road salt applied each winter. So where do we go from here? Like Claire had mentioned, we need you to reach out to your local council to pass the same salt pollution motion that several other municipalities have, calling for that legislative change at the provincial level. And we ask that you meet with your local MPP and urge them to support this legislative change to protect our environment. Most of the MPPs know about this work. We've been at it for well over 4 years now. And I'll tell you, it's gone around the cabinet table several times. And we have had several meetings with MPPs across the province. So it's a file that is well known. And we urge you to get in contact with your MPP and let them know that you think it's important for legislative change to support the fair and balanced liability between private contractors and property owners and managers so that we can collectively reduce the amount of road salt used each winter. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to Chaya.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for highlighting the legislative changes that are being pursued, as well as the actions that municipalities can take, and also for promoting the best practices on salt use and management. So that's also equally important, and we really request all participants to take a look at that website and look at the best practices as well. I would now like to invite John from Pristine Property Maintenance, which is a Smart About Salt certified business, to share some of their perspectives on what can be done to limit salt use.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. You can see my PowerPoint okay?
It hasn't yet come up, John.
I have too much stuff going on. Share. Sorry about that. There we go.
Yes, it's okay.
The joy of technology. I think by 2025, I would figure out Zoom by now, but not quite. So yeah, first of all, I hope everyone is staying nice and not sweaty today, because it is still a scorcher. And it's very ironic in some ways that we are discussing salt in winter on such a hot heat wave in the city of Toronto, at least for those of you in the GTA area. I'm assuming the rest of you in Ontario are also pretty hot today. But anyway, I hope you're all doing okay. Really great to hear from Claire and Joe, and they hit so many great points. And I want to come at this slightly from a different perspective. I am a contractor. I run a business. I don't like paying out tons of money for lawsuits. I don't like paying out tons of money for insurance. What I do like is our beautiful earth, and I think any good person in our world doesn't want to have their business and what they do for a living slowly destroy that. And I think that's what's happening a lot in Ontario right now. So I'm going to use my slides a bit, but I'm also going to just kind of speak with my own personal experiences and what I hope will happen over. Thank you for the heart. What I hope will also happen over time. Joe touched so much on what we're doing with the provincial government, and we feel so much momentum as we are now 6 years into it. So I know there's a slight conflict there, but again, I feel like we are so close. And again, with everyone on this call's help, I feel we can definitely get over the finish line. There's a beautiful salted parking lot on the right. Beautiful salted, I say, in not meaning that in any way. That is such an over-salted parking lot, and that is what most of our clients expect. I've had calls from people saying, I can't feel the salt as I walk in, come back and salt again. One of my good friends that takes care of one of those horrible mass distribution centers got a call once saying, it's snow covered. Can you come and salt? And he got there, and because they had just looked at the cameras, it was so white on the cameras that it actually looked like it was snow, but it was salt. The amount of plants and grass and concrete and asphalt that we repair every spring is insane because of the standard that we are held to as contractors to make sure that everything is constantly salty, constantly safe, and it's getting a bit extreme. I pay about $1 million a year for insurance. That's silly, especially when I feel we do everything right. We follow a standard that we've created, working with the University of Waterloo, on what is the right amount of salt to put down, and still it's not good enough. So just a couple thoughts there. And again, I joke with you there. I've been sued for someone tripping and falling on salt. That is how silly our world is getting in some ways. Claire and Joe talked a lot about the damage we're doing to our world, so I won't touch a ton of that, but I do want to say that salt is still in many ways the answer. I think someone mentioned beet juice, and there are definitely ice melts, which when you actually look at the SDS sheets for them, they are still very much 97, 98, 99% sodium chloride. The problem with salt is it's cheap. At the end of the day, it is still the cheapest, most mass-produced available product to melt ice and snow. There's nothing else available in our world that, besides flamethrowers, but we'll wait for Elon Musk to get caught up on that. But there's nothing else that's readily available to actually do what needs to be done to keep our world moving the way that we want it to. Money makes the world go round, and in many ways, it's still all about money. So salt is the only product out there that can properly do this. Brine is definitely helping as a salt-based product. I know a lot of people that are very much into brine and are making it work for them, but it's not always financially cost effective for people to make the switch. Everyone knows, brine exists, but they don't think about necessarily the roots, the trucks that you now need to have separate from your main trucks to do brining. And brine is not a one-shot stop shop. You still have to have salters available to spread salt. Freezing rain events, brine is useless in them. So there's still those moments when you need to have salters. And again, if you can't afford to do every single one of your trucks with a brine sprayer, then it's a process. So the technology is there. It's getting better. We have a lot of what we call switch and go trucks where we can pop off the V-Box salter and pop on a brine sprayer if we choose to. We're just not there yet. And again, I have about 100 trucks on the road, so it is a huge, gigantic expense that a customer is not going to necessarily want right now because they're looking at saving money. And for me to go to them and say, "Hey, I can actually do better for the environment and use a bit less salt," which saves me money because I'm salt included on all of my contracts, which is very common for the GTA. They're not interested in that. They just want to pay as little as possible to get the best service possible. But again, this slide's more just talking about the different options available with the different colored ice melts, and like I said, there are definitely options, but they're just not always financially viable. One thing also, I think a lot of people have heard about is the amount of salt in the spring. So I think we saw a situation many years ago where they actually found saltwater crabs in Mimico Creek. That's absolute insanity, and we don't want to see that in our world. We want to see the right amount of salt being used that actually melts what's there on site and has as little runoff as possible. Why do we salt so much? Because again, we're tired of being sued. We're held liable for everything. So a lot of the issues actually stem from the contracts we are signing. We're signing these contracts because we want to put food on our plates. We want to keep our employees employed. We want to make sure that we have a proper cash flow. We want to make sure that we're growing our companies and we're taking on business that's sustainable and it makes sense with our roots and it makes sense with the type of properties we want. So we get these contracts sometimes that say you're responsible for anything related to snow and ice. And we say, "Oh, that's not a problem. No big deal." And then we don't realize that every pothole that commercial building owner has not repaired in their parking lot is now every time there's a freeze thaw tracking water throughout the parking lot, and we have to resalt like crazy. Every time there's a downspout in the wrong position, we're out there every morning salting that downspout exit to make sure that no one's slipping and falling at the entranceway. We're also getting pulled into lawsuits where someone tripped and fell on concrete. We see a lot more concrete getting damaged over the winter, especially nowadays with the global warming and the more freeze thaw cycles, because it's popping up. That bit of water is getting into that crack and expanding when it freezes and creating a trip hazard. We're getting pulled into those lawsuits because somehow that's our fault, because we should have been there fixing the concrete the second there was an issue. So a lot of the times it is more financially viable for a contractor to actually oversalt. I might as well put an extra bit of salt down so that concrete doesn't pop, that pothole doesn't freeze, that downspout doesn't have an ice patch at the bottom of it. Let me also be a complete mind reader and wizard and know that that person's going to come out at 2 a.m. with the cleaning bucket from the, the front entranceway of that property and throw it into the middle of the parking lot. We get sued for everything. And again, it causes us to oversalt, even though we're actually losing money every time it salts, which is different than the Americans. A lot of Americans charge per salting, so they actually make more money when they salt more. That's not actually the issue in Ontario. The issue in Ontario is because we're getting pulled into every possible lawsuit, we salt like crazy. And again, very much oversalt and very much have that anxiety to, hey, there's a chance of a dusting, let's go salt. Oh, a lawsuit just happened and went to court and a judge said, oh, you didn't pre-salt. So now all of a sudden pre-salting is the standard. Most of the time pre-salting on a heavy snowfall is an absolute waste. It creates a slushy, part of snow, let's say 10 centimeters is coming down. That first 2 or 3 centimeters is now a slushy mess. It's heavier to push. There's perhaps some validity to the fact that it's a cleaner scrape, but you're also then salting at the end of it anyway. So you're going to take care of that afterwards. So it is getting somewhat silly. And again, I'm getting somewhat jaded by being pulled into all these lawsuits for things I didn't do wrong. I think a lot of it does come from client expectations. The idea that it has to be, we call it wet and black. The asphalt has to always be clear of all snow and ice in every possible square inch of that property, because someone that's trying to sue you will find that one, square foot of ice on the property and slip and fall on it. And there's nothing you can do about it. So very much we are not being smart about salt. Smart about salt is a great program. The problem is uptick. So as Joe mentioned, we're working with the province to try to get them to almost regulate us. What? Contractors want regulation? Very much so. We are tired of seeing our compatriots go out of business. They can't afford the insurance. They can't afford to stop what they're doing work-wise to go and deal with discoveries and lawsuits. They're tired of fighting constantly. So a lot of people that work with me used to run their own companies and now are just saying, hey, give me a paycheck. I'm tired. I'm done. That's not good. Competition is a good thing. Competition is good for all the wonderful people in Ontario that are trying to, get the best service and price for their services. For whether they need a snowplow contractor or a lawn mowing contractor or whatever they need. We don't want to see less and less competition, but that is slowly what's happening. Smart Bow Salt, like I said, is a great program. The problem is very few companies actually have taken it. It's not mandated. It's not regulated. Very few customers say, hey, are you Smart About Salt trained? So the more and more people that know about these type of programs that actually put them as a part of their procurement is better for our longevity, better for the world. We'll see less and less salt used if we are getting that protection on the liability side of it. So one thing I really want to emphasize too is the technology is out there. Every one of my salters has what we call a salt counter on it, so I know to the pound how much salt is being put on that property. Every one of my salters or every one of my plow trucks has a dash camera in it, so it's taking pictures every 15 seconds when you're on that property. As soon as you pass the geofence, all of a sudden it's taking lots of pictures. The videotape's there for me if I need it, but that never happens. It records over before we ever hear about a lawsuit. But again, we have those pictures for as long as we possibly need them. We're at the point where we're now putting ground temperature sensors in every truck, so it automatically is recording what the ground temperature is, because we can often have lawsuits where the air temperature was +3, but the ground temperature was -1. Again, unless you're out there on the site walking around and trying to scuff your toes, you won't always realize how icy it can be when your body tells you the air is warm. We're also getting to the point of having plow sensors, so we can prove that we were there plowing. Not only do we have the videotape, the pictures, but we can actually say, yeah, plow was down, plow was left, plow was right. It sounds insane that we have to go to those levels, but it's all about documentation when you come to lawsuits. And the more you can document, the less likely you will have to pay out as much. And I say pay out as much, you still have to pay out. Even if you've done absolutely nothing wrong, usually you're paying out between $10,000 and $30,000 just to make it go away. on a property that might pay you $2,000 a month for 5 months over the winter. That doesn't make sense, but that is what happens. And we see it all the time. People at the end of the day are constantly being inundated with the Diamond and Diamonds and the Presler and all those different slip and fall lawyers. Every bus I see almost has one of those ads. Every time I watch CP24 for 10 minutes, I probably hit with two of those ads. So it's a culture that we're in some ways of this is how it is, and it has to change, or else, like Claire and Joe have talked about, we're just destroying our world. I also think Joe touched on the education side of thing as well. And again, he mentioned North American wide. If we can get all the states and all the provinces on board, how powerful would that be? So with Landscape Ontario, we've also been talking to our counterparts in the states because they've been doing a lot of good. They've been doing a lot of bad right now too. But from a snow and ice perspective, they've been doing a lot of good. So we're hoping to kind of get a lot of states on board as well. And again, the more provinces and states that are all united on this, it has to go somewhere. So that's our goals right now. And again, just talking about the fact that we want this regulation, we want to have the government come in and say, yes, something needs to happen here, because without that, we are all going to slowly go out of business because we can't afford to stay in business. So yeah, just talking about the goal, just aligning all of ourselves and making sure everyone's on the same page and giving some carrots to the property owners. If a property owner were told that they're going to save on their insurance because they've hired a accredited snowplow contractor that has done all the education through an accredited education company that's following the Landscape Ontario curriculum, that would be amazing. And we'd love them to save money on their insurance because we're going to save money on our insurance. We're also going to save money on salt because we're going to be salting less. And that will then therefore be much better for the world, for the environment. So that's kind of at the end of the day the main goal. And again, I hate to be crass about it, but it very much is about money. So yeah, if we can all get on the same page and all make this happen together, I think we'll be overall so much better. So that is our hope, and that is our end goal. But yeah, I just wanted to really emphasize that the technology is out there, but without regulation, without the government saying you need to do this, we're not going to see that change. And they're not crazy expensive options. A lot of this technology is available very cheaply, but again, companies are not going to change what they've done for 20 years if they are not told they have to and get that protection from the slip and fall lawsuits. So that's the gist of my discussion for you guys today. And yeah, I think happy to take any questions for the collective of us and go from there. How do I unshare? Stop share.
Thank you, John. Thank you for presenting the contractor's perspective and all the challenges that you're facing currently. So we do have quite a few questions and excited. So thank you all. Thank you to all our presenters once again for coming and sharing your perspectives. And we look forward to these responses to all of these questions. On a positive note, there are two announcements here. There's a township of Amaranth, which has passed their resolution on road salt on March 19th. And there's a motion before the City of Toronto tomorrow. So it's not too late to send your comments in. The motion was passed unanimously by the Infrastructure and Environment Committee recently, and so it's going to council tomorrow. So there is a link provided in the chat. Thank you for those announcements. I'll start with the first question. So this is, as a homeowner and a former snow removal contractor, I am and was terrified of someone falling and getting injured on my customer's property, also fearful of a consequent lawsuit. Will anyone comment on beet juice ice melt? Is there any better than salt?
Yeah, so I think I did touch on that in
Yeah.
my presentation. So again, salt is the most readily available product that melts ice and snow. So it's not practical to say, oh, just use beet juice or just use ice melt that's 20 times the price. Everyone says, oh, just use sand. Well, sand has its own environmental issues where it can clog sewers and waterways. And there's also a huge environmental pain in the butt to clean up in the spring and dusty mess. So there's definitely other options. But again, as far as something that has that full ability to take care of the problem of snow and ice and keep everyone safe, it is only salt. But the main issue to me is that we are putting down far too much and doing it out of fear.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Joe, this is for you. The Attorney General has been provided a way forward numerous times related to the Green Snow Pro certification example. Would you like to hear the current thinking from his office? I think it's just a comment to Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear his point of view.
Yeah. So, Joe, you can get in touch with Joe. There's also a couple of comments. Quebec uses eco road designation for roads salted less during the winter, and Montreal and Quebec City also use limestone and salt mixes on city streets and sidewalks to reduce salt usage. There's another comment. Salt pollution is a legacy issue in that soils and groundwater hold back chloride ions and is flushed out during rain events, and this makes summer months equally problematic as precipitation patterns are becoming more intense, frequent, and voluminous. Okay, the next question is how to get contractors who are not part of Landscape Ontario on board with these new ways.
Yeah, this is what John was talking about. Since when does an industry ask for regulation to government? So this is what we're doing, and we want snow and ice management to be a regulated sector. And in order to practice, in order to be a private snow and ice contractor, you will have to go through training and become accredited. So this is how we reach all the snow and ice contractors across the province. They will have to go through the training and accreditation in order to operate.
Okay. I think we have a raised hand in the audience. Would you be able to unmute yourself and ask the question, please? Just trying to see if is that possible.
I don't know if on presentation mode. Oh, maybe I'm.
Oh yeah, there it is.
There
Are
we
you
go.
able? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Benham. I'm the Senior Manager of Watershed Planning and Source Protection at CBC, and I run the CTC Source Protection Region program for. I noticed a couple of things, Claire. Maybe we can. Sorry for the background noise. I'm in the office. On the slide that you use, based on the discussion paper, there's a few points that we can work with you to flush out. But just wanted to make a couple of comments on the RMPs. The risk management plans. This is a requirement under the Drinking Water Source Protection Framework under the Clean Water Act. And while the discussion paper that you're referencing mentions this as maybe not the appropriate tool to address this on a larger scale, RMPs definitely do have a place in addressing this, and among other things. And I have to mention that many risk management officials are supportive of using them to address salt within their jurisdiction. So it is a little more nuanced picture. And I think I would request for the folks to engaging the province, from the source protection perspective, of course, we're very much in favor of addressing the underlying liability challenge, because that is the last outstanding meaningful way of dealing with this. I would like to encourage in those discussions with the elected officials, any changes made to this has to consider the existing regulatory framework. So it has to be able to engage with the Clean Water Act and its requirements to be able to be implemented, particularly in terms of liability. And I'm very happy that education and outreach was mentioned, because that will take a significant education component to be done centrally by the province. And that is not just for contractors or others. It is generally changing the culture, as I think Joe and John mentioned, for people, and managing the expectations of what is normal, what is to be expected, and what is good. And this requires a long-term commitment that has to be done by probably successive governments to get Ontarians to a place where they appreciate what winter is and what the requirements are. And just finally, that this is a lagging indicator. So we are going to do all of this, and we're hoping that it will all get implemented. But again, in terms of managing expectations, what that would mean, because all the work that we do, we may not on a large scale see lowering of trends. Although research coming from many of the institutions that we have show that they can be effective if done in the immediate vicinity of production wells, but overall trends in Ontario will take some time to adjust. So just keeping that in mind. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Any thoughts? Yeah,
You know,
Claire?
sure. Thank you very much for that comment. Yeah, I am not at all saying that we should not be using risk management plans. The point is just, of course, all of us want to be effective. We want to reach the goal, which is protecting our freshwater. And I'm just trying to make the point that all of this effort that we're doing, which is all amazing, is not getting us to our goal. So we need the Ministry of Environment to take this seriously. I just got a letter back from them. We said, welcome new Minister Todd McCarthy, and here are our issues, and this is what we would like you to do. And they replied and said absolutely nothing about limited liability. They just reaffirmed what they're already doing, which is helpful. And I know at Lake Simcoe, they've been supporting research and they've been supporting training of contractors. I don't want to take away from any of those things, but it's not getting us to the goal. So we need multiple solutions to this problem. And it sounds like the Ministry of Environment needs more nudging as well. So, thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Just a quick question to all our presenters. We do have quite a few questions. I hope you're okay to stay a few minutes after 2 p.m. Thank you. Okay, let me get to the next question. John, this is for you. Do you know how much you would reduce your normal rate of liability protection if liability protection was in place, or would it just make you more likely to use DLA?
I'm sorry, DLA?
Yeah, it says DLA.
I don't know what DLA is, but I would definitely say, so I think 50% is actually not even that optimistic. I think it could be more than that. We're pre-salting half the time. That's a waste. During freezing rain events, we're sometimes salting 3 times because, someone might go and shop for some reason during a freezing rain event. And again, that constant salting after a plowing. Well, it's about to be a sunny, beautiful day in an hour, but at 6:01, a.m., someone might sue us. So there's so many things where we are just salting for the sake of salting. So I think 50% is actually very easy to attain if we had protection from liability. If we met the standard, which would have a emphasis on timing. If you basically have a safe property within an hour of your last plowing, I don't think that's unreasonable. But again, we've been sued at 6:01 a.m. Because someone had to go to work in that moment and decided to run out their front door in their leather-soled shoes. So again, we come back to personal responsibility. We come back to some common sense, but it's everything is on the contractor to make sure 24/7 your property is perfect.
And DLA is direct liquid
Direct liquid
application.
application. Sorry, I say brine, so it took me a second there.
Yeah.
So we as a company we invested about $50,000 in brine. Apparently, it was the worst winter to do it because it was a very moist, snowy winter, and I got very frustrated as someone who actually had a brine sprayer on my truck. So I'm going to try it again as a pre-app in a year or two. One gigantic big truck. Because there is the potential for savings there financially and on the actual sodium chloride side of things. Right now we're pure brine, but I again, same thing, like at least 50% if you do everything properly.
Okay, thank you. Has there been any collaboration with the manufacturers of sidewalk machines, Tackless, to record the flow and amount of salt applied during en route patrol?
Yes. So I know this company called, I think it's Hilltip, that has a really, really good, expensive, but really good V-Buck system. The problem is you're already using a manufacturer's, equipment. So I don't have any Hilltips in my fleet. All mine are by a company called Douglas Dynamics, whether they're Westerns or Fishers. So it's very difficult to say, let me just get rid of all those, $300,000, $400,000 worth of equipment to then buy even more expensive salters that a customer is not going to pay me a cent more for. So what we do is do an add-on. Someone asked what our main product is. It's called Viesis. It's a gentleman out of Kitchener who went to the University of Waterloo as a non-snow growing up person. He's from Pakistan. And basically saw a huge issue and really cares about salt usage and the environment. Rakib is his name. And so he invented these amazing aftermarket products that you can add on to your salters. So yeah, we have his salt counters, we have his dash cameras, almost everything added onto our trucks is through his company. He is not paying me for this anyway, but I really believe in it. And I think there's another company called Accu something that does the same type of products. So they're out there. Some more expensive than others. We just found his was the most cost effective for our size fleet as an add-on, and go from there.
Okay, thanks. Is there a sample draft letter we can use to send to our MPP? Claire, I think that's the individual letter does have a sample. Is that the sample? Yeah. You're not, you have to unmute yourself, Claire.
Oh, sorry. It goes to the province. Yeah, that's the target of that sign-on.
All right. All right. Is there no way to reduce lawsuits overall for both owners and contractors outside of gross negligence cases? I think we should use public and private spaces and should have some responsibility to protect ourselves. What are your thoughts? Are many cases frivolous?
I'll let Joe answer this one because I'm too biased.
Yes, I think if we had the expectation that we're not going to see clear and dry pavement directly after a snow event, and we use the right footwear, that we might see less slip and fall cases. But yeah, there's a lot of frivolous slip and fall cases that happen.
Okay. Here's a thought. Are there veterinarians, associations, or dog owner groups that could be tapped into because they're seeing the immediate impact of too much salt out there?
They are a very vocal group. Everyone that has a dog loves their dog. We definitely get complaints if we've oversalted the front of a condominium. A lot of dog owners don't like putting booties on their dogs, and then get mad at us that their dog's feet are sore. So no comment being made there. But anyway, so I think there's definitely an opportunity with those groups to get them on board as well because they would love to see less salt. And dog owners will walk anywhere. They'll walk through an icy park. They'll don't fall. They just walk their dogs and they're fine.
Does your proposed limited liability model include a personal liability component as well as contractor property manager?
Joe, you want to take that one? I don't believe it does in a sense. Like we're for us to go after people and say you personally need to be responsible, we're not really taking that focus.
No, not at all. Where this comes from, when we say balance the liability, so the liability doesn't disappear, right? So if the contractor is not liable, because they've done the work that they say they're going to do as part of the contract, the property owner or manager then becomes responsible because likely there's been a deficiency in the property, right? So there's a whole pre-season inspection checklist and toolkit that's being proposed as part of this work, so that before the snow even flies, the property should be in a maintainable way where pooling and ponding shouldn't happen, and there's ideal conditions to put the right amount of salt down.
Yeah, we've been working on something we call the tool with Landscape Ontario. So basically, the whole concept is, hey, property owner, have a wander around your property and take a look at it from this perspective. Where are your awnings? Are they dripping every time the snow hits them? Where are your downspouts? Where are all those things that Joe just mentioned on your property? And give it a score. And take that score to your insurance company. And if it's a high score, you should save on your insurance because you're a great property owner and you're doing good. It's a low score. You should be paying more for insurance. And again, get them in the crosshairs because right now it feels like it's the contractor's always the one with the focus.
There's also another positive comment here. Great presentation and points. Sign the letter. Hopefully our PM and Premier can find some common ground and get more alternatives on the ground for the upcoming winter. Thank you so much for your support, Rachel. The next question, I'm aware that we are over time, but thank you so much for staying back and for those who can continue to participate. As a contractor, the product used, salt, brine, etc., depends on the cost or the dollar amount approved by the building owner. How can we convince building owners on using more expensive, eco-friendly products?
I don't think we have an answer for that. They would have to budget for it. The infrastructure would have to be in place with the contractors to apply it if it is a brine, or if it's, you would never take your V-Box salter and fill it up with, bags of ice melt. It's just not financially viable. And it also would take a lot of extra time. And time at 4 in the morning when you're trying to get everything done by 6 a.m. is very valuable. Those are important minutes. So yeah, that's why I keep coming back to salt is the answer, but just way less of it to the point that it's not leaching constantly into our waterways and infrastructure.
Okay. What are the human effects of high sodium levels? What evidence is there in Ontario that human health will be affected? Will the Ministry of Health study or investigate this? Not sure. Can take this.
I
Any
don't think any of us would have an
thoughts?
answer for that, but
But we'll take, yeah, Claire, do you
I think inhaling, not good, but that's about all I can say. There are some places we've seen, we have a member in the Oshawa area who's taken a lot of pictures, and it's like you can see like salt dust over
yeah.
the highway in the winter. And so especially if you're living near a place like that, maybe there's a scientist. I think there are scientists on this webinar. I know there are. That it would be really great to have a little research summary about that.
We had a high-end property downtown that we had to spread nothing but like calcium flakes on it. That stuff burnt. You felt it in your eyes, you felt it on your, through your gloves almost. So the alternatives are not any better sometimes on your skin. And definitely, if you've been out hand salting with salt all night, you're feeling it on your skin. Your skin is leather by the end of winter.
Uh, the last question that I see here for now, at least, there are several types of infrastructure. That is rails, parking lots, transit stops, active transportation infrastructure, and sidewalks that are also maintained by contractors for municipalities. These areas of work are highly impactful on salt usage, but are not covered under minimum maintenance. Is there potentially an opportunity to expand the minimum maintenance framework to cover both public and private properties?
Sorry, Andrew, can you speak for a second? What do you mean by minimum maintenance? If you're still on. Because yeah, I can picture lots of pathways through, a forest or something that are going to be right next to a waterway. Um,
It's high level. It's the rules that the municipality follows for plowing their sidewalks, etc. And I'm very interested in this question too, how your
yeah.
initiative and the municipal maintenance standard meet or overlap, because having spoken to a number of councils, sometimes some of the staff or legal will say, well, how can we apply this to the municipal maintenance standard? Because a lot of municipalities hire independent contractors to do their long-term care home parking lots or rec facilities and stuff like that. So I think those contractors would be subject to the regulatory reform that we're advancing. But I'm not really sure how they fit.
What about mandating safe removal of salty snow piles at the end of winter rather than have those melt and run into waterways nearby?
Where are they going? So I think that's part of the issue is, there's no in Ottawa, there are snow dump areas. In the GTA, the only snow dump areas are run by the city. But there's, a lot of contractors that are just putting it in a lot somewhere. It's not really solving the problem. It's just moving it from one area to another, but the same exact problem exists.
And I think Andrew has clarified, sorry, the previous one is exactly the type of regulation that protects municipalities in the same way that you're asking for protection for contractors, minimum maintenance.
Yeah, I think on that note, then they would be very much hand in hand. So I'm a contractor that does work for two different municipalities. We do a hospital, we do work for Hydro One. Yeah, we look at contractors as contractors, and everything we're trying to do with the province would be to cover everyone that does work in the province, whether they get whoever they get paid by.
Okay. And there's a question, what about sand mixed with salt?
Yeah, you'll see that up north more, just because salt is not effective in the colder temperatures that they get up north. But yeah, it's not as effective. I see someone said sand is used in Algonquin Park to prevent the wildlife from licking salt on the roads. Yeah, so they're going to use it where they need to, but again, it does come with other issues as well, as far as the cleaning up and the clogging of waterways.
Okay. I am not sure if there are any other questions. Sorry, someone.
Yeah, so Andrew's comment there. Yeah, so as a contractor, I don't know a lot about the minimum maintenance standard that the municipalities are held to, but yeah, I think we try to get everything in line and harmonize as much as possible.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of our questions. Thank you so much for the engagement. So many comments and questions, and I think we've got a lot of positive energy coming out of this webinar. We really thank you for your time and for sharing out the petitions and the letters and taking this forward. We will share the recording of the webinar, and there are more resources on our Partners in Project Green Salt Management Hub as well. So we look forward to future engagement. So thank you all to all our participants and our presenters, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.